Welcome everyone to this webinar on the basics of building retuning, or BRT. My name is Alana Colvin and I will be hosting today's webinar. Several quick items of business before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties hearing the presentation, please use the chat pad and we'll correct that promptly. We'll wait to answer any specific questions until the end of the presentation, since that will give us more time to go through the material efficiently, and then we'll leave time to answer the questions at the end of the presentation. This presentation will last for roughly 50 minutes, followed by a question and answer. And this webinar is being recorded and will be loaded onto the PennTAP website. At this time, we have 9 participants, so I'm going to actually move forward with this presentation. The intent of today's webinar is to discuss how to combine energy efficiency strategies with preventative maintenance to achieve your energy saving goals at the lowest possible costs. This process is what we call the basics of building retuning. We also have Cara Rubio joining us today from Women for a Healthy Environment. Cara will be discussing indoor air quality and mold as it relates to school districts. Thank you, Cara, for joining us today.
Thank you.
I would also like to acknowledge the Department of Environmental Protection and the Energy Programs Office of Pennsylvania and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory for their support in the Building Retuning program. So today's agenda, I am going to go over some background on PennTAP. I'm going to introduce building retuning and its phases. We will discuss some benchmarking tools. We will go through how to complete a walkthrough with some examples. We will share some implementation strategies and look into documentation and sustainability practices as well, which will follow up with Cara, and she will share her information on indoor air quality and mold. Today's objective is to provide you with enough background and guidance about building retuning to support your own building retuning measures and sustainability practices. So PennTAP, or Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Program at Penn State, is a statewide technical assistance organization charged with supporting Pennsylvania businesses and anchor institutions, including manufacturers, municipalities, educational institutions, entrepreneurs, and economic development agencies. As a department within Penn State, PennTAP offers unique access to abundance of resources from one of our premier state universities in the country, including you have access to the faculty, the staff, and the students. PennTAP can also provide clients with assistance from the rich network of government entities and private organizations. PennTAP focuses on helping Pennsylvania businesses through 2 primary areas of expertise. We have energy and environment services as well as innovation services. Since being founded in 1965, we have delivered services and solutions to many Pennsylvania businesses and professionals, creating a legacy of documented economic impact within the state and positive returns on investment to funding partners. In the past 10 years, PennTAP has worked with more than 3,700 organizations who have in turn reported approximately $300 million in economic benefits and the creation or retention of more than 4,000 Pennsylvania jobs. PennTAP's mission is to engage, empower, and educate Pennsylvania organizations through technical assistance and the Penn State expertise and resources. PennTAP services include the energy and environment services. We have pollution prevention and energy efficiency projects, P2, E2, economy, energy and environment projects, E3, building retuning, or BRT, and energy management systems, or ENMS. Under innovation, we have product and process improvement, learning factory opportunities, and student entrepreneurship. For 2018, the Energy and Environment team has seen success on completing 53 on-site assessments, whether that be P2, E2, E3, BRT, or ENMS trainings. We have seen $2.8 million in economic benefits and 1.5 million kilowatt hours reduced, engaging over 150 students, Penn State students in graduate and undergraduate studies. The innovation team in 2018 has seen a lot of success as well. We have created 34 jobs. We have engaged over 300 students. The INC-U program has awarded $30,000 in grants for student-based startups. There were 46 Learning Factory projects, and economic benefits of $1.2 million have been recognized. So, what is building retuning? Building retuning, or BRT, is a prescriptive approach to identify and correct no-cost or low-cost building operational problems that lead to energy waste. The principles of BRT are simple. If you don't need it, turn it off. If you do need it, run it efficiently. Your aim is to learn your building's personality so you can get the results you are looking for and know where your occupants are at what time of day, taking time to adjust your controls on your energy systems to reflect your real needs. Also can support continuous training of your staff and occupants so you are successful in reaching your goals to reduce energy costs. There are 5 phases to BRT. We have data collection, investigation, implementation, documentation, and sustain. Please note that these phases are not step-by-step. They are implemented at different points, but together. For the process of this webinar, we are breaking them down to review each one independently, but they are interdependent on each other. Data collection. In this phase, you take the time to collect the information necessary to trend and plan your building walkthroughs during the investigation phase. What type of data are you looking to collect? You want to collect as much as you can. What is the age, size, type of your building? Collect your utility bills. Look to see if you can find the as-built and construction documentation such as O&M manuals or sequence of operations. Look for different types of equipment you have installed. Are there any recent repairs, or do you have the maintenance schedules? Consider if there was any construction or changes to the building. Also note when the building is occupied and other areas of various operations, such as holidays or a summer schedule. A way to profile your data is by benchmarking. Benchmarking your energy consumption will give you a better understanding of where your energy is going and will help you identify where to focus your attention. As seen in the pie charts, the utility usage has been broken down by systems. In the case of electricity usage, we can see that lighting, cooling, and office equipment make up 75% of that utility consumption. Therefore, these would be your target areas to focus on implementation strategies for energy efficiency opportunities. Benchmarking from scratch can be very daunting. We recommend that you work with Energy Star's Portfolio Manager or the Department of Energy's Building Energy Asset Score tool, or do both. You can use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager to manage your energy consumption and water usage, among other things, of any building. It also has the ability to share data and chart your usage for you. The U.S. Department of Energy's Building Energy Asset Score tool is a national standardized tool for assisting the physical and structural energy efficiency of your building. It looks at your current building and its energy usage and provides you with a score of your current state, but also provides you with a goal for where your building could be in its most efficient state. Every building is different and is being used in a specific purpose. These tools take this into account. Portfolio Manager and the Energy Asset Score tool are 2 resources available to you at no cost to help you benchmark your building. You can model any building, and it has the ability, both have the ability, to make your data public or private. Moving forward with the investigation phase, our goal in this phase is to identify operational problems and energy savings opportunities. In the investigation phase, you want to walk down your major building operations. We have building envelope, HVAC systems and controls, air distribution, lighting systems and controls, hot water, office equipment, and indoor environment conditions. Information collected during this step is used to identify operational problem and energy saving opportunities for implementation. It is not the goal to solve issues discovered during this phase. We will later prioritize the findings in the implementation stage. We'll be discussing each of these operations in more detail as to what to look for during your investigation. Some guidance. You want to look at your building's conditions in both the heating season and the cooling season. You want to look at your operations using your senses. You want to look at your equipment, listen to your equipment, possibly understand the smell of your equipment. Are you burning oil, for example? And also, when safe, touch that equipment. You want to log all of this information and observations during this walkthrough. You will capture these opportunities, and these opportunities will ultimately calculate to potential energy savings. Public service announcement, please consider your safety when doing these walkthroughs. Building envelope. Up first, we will talk through building envelope. What you do, you walk down the outside and the inside of your building. Look at your doors. Can you open your exterior? Can you open your interior doors? Do you have interior doors being used as exterior doors? That means they're missing insulation. Look at your heaters and cooling units around your exterior doors. How often are they running? Windows. Are they fogged? Can you see through them? Can you open and close them? Single pane, triple pane, double pane windows? What do you have in your building? Also consider daylight opportunities with windows as an option, or shading if there's a lot of solar heat. Uninsulated penetrations, look at pipes around the outside of your building. Look for old light or junction boxes. They may not be covered anymore. Maybe there's missing caulking around your windows or around bricks. Look at outlets, and also look for rusty, wet, moldy areas. Water is skidding into those places and is something that needs extra attention. Insulation is best when using an infrared camera. We will talk about that later in the presentation, but what you want to do for insulation is look at your perimeter walls and your interior walls. Look for damaged locations, look around those penetrations, and also around those doors and windows. Consider that in a commercial and in school buildings, windows take up a lot of the square footage of your exterior walls. So you want to treat your windows and your insulation with lots of love. Roofs, if you have a white roof, make sure it's clean. Otherwise, you will not be seeing the savings that you originally planned with a white roof. Do you have standing water? If you have standing water, you could have a potential for leaks. This causes a potential for mold and ruined insulation. Attics and crawl spaces. Make sure you know which season you're in and check if your vents are open or closed, plugged up. Are you ventilating during the summer seasons? Are your fans on? Are there control temps? Do you have pests that have moved in? Look around for those as well. Over the next slide, we'll review some examples of findings. In the top left photo, we have a thermal image of an exterior building. Take a moment to see what your building looks like on a hot day or a cold day. Does a lot of benefit to the facilities. Doing this can help you recognize insulation issues quickly. In the bottom left, we have a photo of a window that is open during the wintertime. We can see in the back that the tree does not have leaves on it, and that this is a end of season type photo. So why is the window open? What is happening in that HVAC zone? Is it too hot in that area? Also, consider the doors. There is a lot of light and air infiltration underneath those doors. Anytime you see natural daylight under a doorway or in a window, you have airflow. And also in the bottom right, we have a picture of an exterior wall that has caved in. For reference, that wall hole is about 5 foot tall. It's about as tall as me. So if you have a space that big, consider what can move in, how much water you're getting in there, and what's happening behind that wall. After you've investigated building envelope, you want to take the time to look at individual operating systems and review their current conditions. For HVACs, problems can occur in many of the components. You have economizers, you have refrigerant levels, fans that are operating. Are they operating during occupied or unoccupied hours? Are they cycling on and off for heat and cooling rather than providing ventilation? Understand what your HVAC controls are doing. Maybe your zones have changed. If you've done any renovations, you might have to consider your new zones, and also make sure if you have multiple thermostats now that they are not overlapping. Common problems are jammed or frozen outdoor air dampeners, missing damaged panels, seals, ductwork, non-functioning actuators or disconnected wires, malfunctioning outdoor air or indoor air return sensors. There could be faulty control settings, installed wrong is a possibility, or wired incorrectly. Also consider any debris or plant life growing around your HVACs. In the photos, we have a seized HVAC. The faulty controls can be seen in this example, and the HVAC has physically frozen over. Then we have maintenance, incomplete maintenance where the doors weren't put back on. You never know if the doors weren't put back on. You can't say a few days later that the conditions are sound. Something could move in, leaves and debris could get in there. You don't really know, you don't have that control anymore. Also, we have a broken P-trap, and then we have a picture of a motor that has a lot of debris around it. If there is a motor, many systems have motors. If there is a motor, there is vibration. And if there's vibration, screws loosen, belts stretch, and debris can form based on that. So make sure you put eyes on your equipment to see if you have a lot of vibrations coming from that equipment. Maybe you need new belts. Maybe you need to tighten up a few screws. But if there's debris, try to figure out where that debris is coming from, what is falling apart. Make sure you take a moment to put eyes on your air distribution systems to confirm any conditions of the ductwork, your exhaust fans and your dampeners. 10 to 30% of conditioned air is wasted due to leaks. Make sure you don't have any blockages in your ductwork. Make sure there are not any holes in your ductwork. And also, really try not to put anything in front of those vents. Indications that you have an issue with your air distribution system include exhaust fans not operating correctly, stuffy odors, or mold buildup. Condensation on windows too. Also, if you have quick melting snow on the roof, your attic or crawl space might be a little bit warmer than it should be. According to the DOE, lighting could account up for 40% of the energy use in a commercial office space building. 40% of the energy use in the commercial space building. So when considering your lighting, look around your facility and see what you have for your existing lighting. You might have tube lights, that T8s or T12s, maybe even T5s. Maybe you have outside lights that are high pressure sodium vapor or metal halide. Maybe those are in the high bay situations like your gymnasiums. Maybe you have incandescents or CFLs throughout your facility. Take a look and get an idea of what you have and what you would like to upgrade to new technology. Consider each space, what is that space's purpose? Consider the light levels. Libraries have specific light levels. Gyms for the sports have specific light levels. You have classrooms, stairwells, conference rooms. Things to look for. Does any of your lighting have any controls? Are they just manual switches? Do you have dimmers? Do you have clocks? Are the proper light levels being maintained, or are you overlit? If you're overlit, is there an opportunity to delamp? Using a light meter, you can verify the light levels to see if you are meeting the Illuminating Engineer Society's recommendations for light levels in specific spaces. Also, as a caveat, educational signs at manual switches have been proven to be very effective and are very minimum cost for producing behaviors that you want to see. Turn off the lights when you leave, turn on when you need them. Also, keep in mind, are your lamps and fixtures clean? Dirty lamps produce poor light. Hot water systems. Consider where your hot water is going and how long between uses. Are you heating up water for gym showers that are never used? Do you have insulation around all of your hot water piping? Using a thermal camera, you can use the sensor to see what your hot water systems are actually doing. You use hot water maybe for your space heating, maybe for domestic water in your kitchens. You want to make sure that you have insulation on your lines and your tanks. You want to look for external leaks, but also internal leaks, such as steam trap leaks. Consider your zones and consider setback controls. Also, if you have the opportunity, purchase Energy Star rated equipment. Office equipment. Over the past 2 decades, office equipment has increased significantly and will continue to increase. So are your computer screens turned on or turned off? Are you using Energy Star rated equipment? Some computer equipment can be set up to automatically go into energy saving mode if they're configured properly. Also, this is where signs can be very helpful. Again, having a note on the computer monitor to say shut off when done. Also for those weekend nights for when everyone leaves work. Try to eliminate clutter and prevent dust buildup. Digital equipment hates heat. Overheating your digital equipment will degrade its life expectancy, and so you will end up purchasing equipment more often. Keep that in mind. Indoor environment conditions. This is the last area to investigate, and this is about the job of each space. Not every space has the same job, so consider your different environments. You have classrooms, you have computer labs, you have libraries, you have locker rooms, etc. Are you zoned in these areas appropriately? When considering a project, consider your end customer. In a classroom, you'll have your educators and your students for possibly 8 hours a day, but in the kitchens, in the cafeteria, you have a different type of schedule. This is just understanding what you're doing in each space and what space might be a bigger, stronger priority or just a different outlook, different client. BRT, tools of the trade. While completing your investigation, we recommend you take a few low-cost tools with you to help uncover any issues. Many smart tools are available nowadays and are very helpful in building retuning measures. You can look at temperature, humidity, airflow, air pressure, air velocity. They're very handy. First, we have the Seek infrared thermal camera. You can find problems like air leaks, missing insulation, or even electrical overloads in your power lines. It is tiny, it is portable, and it can be used with several smartphones. And what's really nice about the camera is it will give you a scale of what you're currently seeing, and it will give you multiple set points so that you can measure and compare your space. In these photos, you can see that we have used the infrared camera to look at pipe insulation or the lack thereof. We can see air infiltration through a fan that wasn't properly seasoned. There is an exterior door that's actually an interior door. It is leaking all that air. We also have a fridge that has equipment around it, and that equipment is overheating it on the side, which means your fridge is working harder to maintain the food and such inside to be cooler. Just a note. Also, in the last photo at the bottom right, we can see that there is insulation missing or damaged in that corner wall. We don't know what it is. Insulation can be a bit tricky, but the idea is you found a problem, so now you can report it. The AAB Smart HVAC tools are environmental loggers that connect to your smartphone through Bluetooth. Through these apps and the dashboard, you can set up the tool, name the tool, schedule it to take readings once an hour or once a day. You can pull that data when you're within Bluetooth range, and you can trigger the device to dump that information into an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can plot that data, such as what you see here. To take advantage of these smart tools, you will need to download the apps to your smart device. Seek Thermal app is for the infrared camera, and the CPS Link app is for the HVAC smart tools. Both of these apps are free, and you can download them to your device prior to buying the products. The infrared camera is around $250, and the HVAC tools vary between $500 to $200. Implementation. Now that we have discussed different strategies of approaching your different equipment and systems, next step is decide what to implement. Assume nothing. It is a critical step because everything will be possible. Not everything will be possible. So taking a moment to see what your issues are, where you have potential to implement, and then deciding on the best project to implement will create a priority list for your team to work towards. We'll have the list of the must-dos versus the nice-to-haves. When choosing the appropriate project, you need to consider your cost, your return on investment, and Is the project easy to do? Will it be an improvement? And also, you need to consider the safety and security of every project as well. Documentation phase, reporting on your retuning findings and your impacts. Documentation comes in many forms. As mentioned earlier, these BRT phases are dynamic. Documentation should be ongoing from the start. Documentation comes in many forms. We have the benchmarking discussed earlier, estimated energy savings. We have ranking the prescriptive retuning measures, documenting those, selecting which to pursue and why, and then that data to show the impact before and after. What does it look like when you complete a walkthrough? So here's an example of a way to document. Break down your area by area and system. Have a place for your observations, and then there is the column labeled effort, which refers to the labor and or cost associated with implementing that BRT measure. So low refers to a couple hours minimum cost, while high refers to a lot of time and a lot of cost. General rule of thumb for this is low is under $1,000, medium is between $1,000 and $5,000, and then any project that is a high effort project will be over $5,000. This is, again, building retuning, so it's the low cost, no cost. That's what we're very much focusing on, are those low and medium projects. In general, the measures that are required for the high level projects will take longer and are almost always considered retrofits. So if you find a high effort project that's not necessarily part of building retuning, but you completed the investigation and discovered that opportunity, so always worth writing those down. Similar, we have a potential savings column, and this refers to your saving opportunities for specific energy use. So what this means is if you have a lighting project and you understand that there's energy savings for converting to LED, you are only looking at the current lighting and then the percent savings associated with lighting. So not looking at other electrical use systems. So if you consider that, low is 5% savings of a system, or medium, which is 5 to 10% savings, and then high is a range between 10 to 30% savings for altering a system. You should have a list of several low, couple medium, and maybe 1 or 2 high. And you want to do this for every building. What you would recognize is that you would have overlapping projects. You're going to see that lighting is going to be throughout your district. You're going to see that building envelope might be on 3 of your buildings. And that way you can also prioritize to say, this style of project is what we're going to tackle. And then you can really figure out those potential savings. We also always want to highlight various energy saving achievements made by other districts. So this slide includes just a share of what other schools have done, and these projects and efforts tend to be on the high and medium side. These are the one-time done projects. We have a lot of lighting projects. We have new boilers that had smart valves. There was somebody who had middle school showers running constantly with hot water, but it turns out those middle schoolers did not take a lot of showers. And so what they recognized was they put in a very small hot water tank in that particular area and downsized the water tank for the kitchens as well. So they ended up saving energy by looking at their end users and what they actually needed versus what they could use. Sustain. Now that you have done your BRT measures and you have implemented some projects and you are looking for the next opportunities, you want to be continuous in your sustainable efforts. You can achieve this in many ways. You can use the energy management system for your facility. You can use benchmarking and continue to add data, such as to the portfolio manager or energy asset score tool. Continue to move forward with preventative maintenance programs, upgrade energy saving projects when you can, and always tell your story when you have done something awesome with your BRT projects. This encourages behavior changes with occupants within the building and also inspires others around you to do better. With that in mind, up next we have Cara and her discussion on indoor air quality and the impacts of mold.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about indoor air quality and mold specifically from a public health perspective. So today we're going to be discussing three different areas of mold cleanup and moisture remediation, including the potential health effects of improper mold prevention and remediation, best practices for schools to adopt for mold prevention, and how to best communicate about any mold or moisture issues a school district or commercial building may be facing. So at the start of the school year here in Allegheny County, we got a lot of news alerts. We counted 8 school districts that had at least one school building that had to delay the start of school in order to fix the moisture intrusion and mold and clean up the mold that was in their buildings. If a school building has to be closed for mold cleanup or moisture remediation, that tells us 2 things. So the first is that there was a lack of preventive maintenance in preparation for the school start dates. And the second is that our buildings here are older. Their infrastructure is not as readily able to respond to flash flood events or heavy rains, which we're seeing an increase of here in this part of the state and across the state in general. So health effects of mold. So what do we mean when we say we're taking a public health perspective? So public health is the idea that we're looking at the health of an entire community, not just the health of individuals one by one. So instead of diagnosing and treating diseases in a clinic with a doctor with one patient at a time, we're looking at the health of an entire population of people and seeing where are the vulnerabilities for illness and disease to spread, and then where are the opportunities to increase the health of building occupants. So as school staff, or if you are a building operator or maintenance person of any type, you are helping to maintain the health of that community. And by law, we require children to attend public schools. And so as stewards of the learning environment, we need to make sure that the school buildings are healthy places for all people to work and to learn. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we're exposed to mold. So all mold has the potential to have a health effect. It doesn't matter if it's just black mold, orange, any color. We can be exposed to mold in a lot of different ways. So exposure generally happens through inhalation, so breathing in mold spores, whether they're dead or active. Ingestion, so if you think about foods that have mold, cheese has mold, bread has mold with yeast, and also through direct contact with skin. So if you can touch it, you can get what we call an acute symptom. So that's a short-term response to mold that happens in a lot of rashes. So when we think about a school building or a building in general, mold grows because there are conditions in the building that allow it to grow. And that's mainly moisture and a source of food. So if you have moisture problems or moisture intrusion in your building, you're maintaining a condition where mold can grow really quickly. If you smell a musty odor, if that's something being reported, that's usually a clue that there's active mold growth happening in that area. And so you need to take some steps to investigate where the moisture is coming from. So most of the time when we get calls from schools about this, custodians and maintenance staff have noted roof leaks, leaks in a lot of different places, but also deferred maintenance. So some tasks that are at the bottom of the list and that have just allowed the mold growth to become visible to building occupants. Also condensation, so when we're switching between seasons or we have a weird winter where there are 60-degree days after snowstorms, we're gonna see a lot more of that condensation and evaporation happen in the building. Plumbing failures, slow leaks, and HVAC systems are also places where moisture intrusion happens. So like I mentioned, all mold has the potential to have a health effect on your building occupants. Mold spores can produce allergens, so some people can have an allergic reaction. They can also be irritants in our respiratory system. So the respiratory system, the symptoms that we see are a lot of things that have to do with breathing, our lung function, but mold exposure, especially chronically, can also induce headaches. If it's on someone's skin, mold spores are active. When we think of younger children, kindergarten, first grade classrooms sitting on a carpet with active mold growth, they can get skin rashes and irritation. And there are a few folks who are really hypersensitive and they'll get an allergic reaction that's similar to if they're eating something that they're allergic to. Mold can also exacerbate asthma attacks. And so there are some school buildings where we've been in where we have adults who have active asthma and they're seeing more frequent asthma attacks because of the chronic exposure to mold in their buildings. So when we think about who is at risk for mold, we think about these folks. So these are the folks who you're going to see the symptoms come out in first. So when someone is reporting a health complaint to the school nurse or bringing up a maintenance request that has a health concern attached to it to your facilities director, you have to take the time to listen and take that seriously. These are the folks in your building who will have responses the fastest. So individuals who have an immune compromised system. So these are folks who maybe are in respiratory distress, kids who have active asthma, people who are recovering from the flu. Their immune systems are not yet back up to speed, and so they're going to respond faster to chronic mold exposures. Of course, anyone who has asthma, mold is a big trigger for them. Pregnant or expectant mothers, there's a lot of changes going on in their bodies, and so they'll be more sensitive to environmental exposures as well. Custodial staff, your staff is working with cleaning chemicals day in and day out. They're also responding to maintenance, and sometimes they do some of the mold cleanup in-house themselves, and so they can also be at a greater risk for mold exposure. Young children, so your kindergartners, if you have an early learning program or a pre-K program in your building, you could see rashes on them first, and also a few hypersensitive individuals. There are some people whose immune systems are just built that they can't really be in an environment where there's mold. We know that mold is everywhere and it changes per season, and so they'll usually have chronic flare-ups. And then just another note about mold. So exposure to different strains of mold can produce a range of diverse effects in individuals. So some individuals will have no symptoms while others may suffer more severe negative symptoms. But because there's no established limit at which exposure to certain strains of mold can create a health impact, then we must be diligent and pay special attention to individuals who do report and who do present health concerns. I think, oftentimes the job of facilities directors can get a little bit muddled when people report health concerns. This is a good place to think about who the health professional is in your building. It's going to be your school nurse. And so you want to have a relationship with your school nurse, because sometimes those health concerns get reported straight to you. Sometimes they get reported to your nurse. And so to have communication with your school nurse can help you think about where the vulnerabilities are for the population, for the health of the population in your building. So in general, when we go into schools, and especially when it comes to mold, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So doing a little bit more of the prevention work can really reduce the risk of mold growth and exposure in your school. So we're going to go through some best practices for mold prevention. So really, when we're talking about mold growth, we're really talking about moisture, right? So you want to solve your moisture problems before they become mold problems. If you know there is moisture entering your building, you shouldn't wait until there are health concerns. You shouldn't wait until there's visible mold reported to start acting on it. And usually if there is a moisture problem, some of that can be taken and done in-house. And I'll share some guidelines that we can use about when to call in an outside contractor and what to look for in an outside contractor. So some good tips for moisture control in your building is to have a preventive maintenance plan in place. This one is the first one and the one I talk about the most, because we know that there is a lot of turnover in the facilities and maintenance industry. So if you have written procedures down, it's easier to share with newer staff who aren't as familiar with the buildings about where you keep things and what the procedures are in place to respond to these maintenance concerns. The second is to find trusted partners if mold remediation is necessary. So if it's a problem that your school district can't take on in-house, what are the things you should look for in an outside contractor? One, they have to be able to have, or they have to have a history of working in a commercial building, preferably another school. You can't call folks who are more experienced working in a home setting, because the setting is completely different. So you want to look for what certifications they have, if they have experience working in a school, and if they're able to do both the moisture remediation and the mold cleanup. You want to fix whatever leaky plumbing is there, watch for condensation, prevent moisture, look at your HVAC machine, maintain low indoor humidity. And this is a really great low cost way to monitor mold growth, especially if you have a hallway or a classroom that is constantly getting reports of musky odors. And then to perform regular maintenance and clean. Cleaning is a really great preventive maintenance tool to prevent a lot of environmental exposures in the building. And also think about your foundations. So a lot of our buildings in Southwest PA are pretty old. And so, with time, sometimes they'll sink, sometimes the foundations will change. And so you need to do a walkthrough to take a look at if water can be entering through the building envelope in that way. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to communicate about mold to your school community if you find it in your building. So there are 3 goals when we talk about mold and moisture remediation in a building, especially if we have to close the building down and take away instruction time from students and from teachers. So the 3 goals of your communication strategy should be: 1, to build trust; 2nd, to prioritize health and safety; and 3rd, to provide accountability. So these aren't like in any hierarchy, but your communication strategy should address each of these. So open lines of communication with your school community builds trust. You don't want to hide information from your school community. If you're going to have an air quality testing company come into your community and take a test of your school, you want those results to be accessible. My word of advice here is to post the interpretation of results that company will give you first. Reading the results of an air quality test when there's lots of numbers, lots of different strains of mold posted, can be very confusing to navigate. That's why we call in experts to do this type of testing. And by prioritizing the interpretation of summaries, we understand what that looks like in your building. There'll be some mold spore counts that look really high, but those aren't the molds that we should be concerned about, because they're the ones that are present outdoors and are coming into your building. So, when we think about this, we think about that saying, the dose makes the poison, right? So we're not just looking at the concentration of mold, we're also looking at the different strains. If there's a strain inside your building that's not present outside your building, that could be a priority mold to fix first before the ones with the high counts. And so there's a lot that goes into that summary of interpretation and results. And so we prioritize that when we share our results with families. Okay. So also stay on message. So when you are communicating, you want to focus on what actions you're taking. It's not about assigning blame. It's not about, it's not about naming folks. It's about what action you're going to take moving forward. You want to explain what procedures you have in place. A lot of schools already have procedures for how to deal with mold. Outline them to show your community that you have a plan to address mold. You want to demonstrate that you have a unified and coordinated effort. So if the superintendent is going to give out the letter, if the school board is going to give out the letter, if the school principal is going to give out a letter, make sure that you are all on the same page, you're all on the same team. Again, it's a nice place to rope in your school nurse, who's the health professional in your building. And so to create a communication team of all those folks will be important. You also want to avoid jargon. You want to talk in plain speaks. There's water that entered the building. It created the conditions for mold. Moving forward, this is who we contracted with. This is what they're going to do to the building. This is the timeline of events. And this is how we're going to update you moving forward. Those are really the talking points you want to hit. I do want to have a note here, and it's in bold because I think it's important for schools to remember. The goal of mold remediation, moisture cleanup, and mold cleanup is not to pass an air quality test, but it's to eliminate the moisture in your buildings. That's the message you want parents to take away, and teachers and your school community members to take away when they read your communication to them. You want to emphasize this, right? It's not about getting the numbers lower. It's really about holistically getting rid of that moisture that's coming into your building and creating the conditions for that mold to thrive and grow. So this is really important. Your response should prioritize health and safety. So when you are looking for a contractor, when you're looking for an air testing company, if you're bringing out of district folks to work in your building, you really want to make sure that your goal is the same. You want to prioritize the health and safety of the people who are in your building for over 8 hours a day. And you want to use resources that are well vetted and that are evidence-based. And so that means that they're backed by research and they make sense to use in your building. And so the EPA has some great guidance. NIOSH, which is a CDC Office for Occupational Safety and Health, has a mold assessment tool that is really fantastic. And make sure that you tell your community that you're relying on the guidance from these research-backed organizations to inform your work moving forward. You want to implement evidence-based best practices and not just buy items that, say that they're gonna, that have that guarantee that they don't grow mold on them. Some paint companies will sell paint that says that mold growth is not possible on them. That's not a guarantee. In fact, there are schools who rely on that as their only mold prevention, and they still get mold in their buildings. So that's not a guarantee. Another thing I want to caution folks again is using ozone generators or any ozone generating air cleaner. The EPA specifically has guidance that says that used with manufacturers' instructions, it's not enough to get rid of mold. It's not enough to get rid of indoor air quality contaminants. And if you use it not following the manufacturer's instructions, you need to pump more ozone, which we know is a health risk. It's something that has acute effects. So if you have a big amount of ozone, when it's a high ozone day, we cancel sports practices, we cancel games, because it really has the chance to affect our lung health. And this is of people of all ages. So don't bring a machine that creates ozone into your school. It's not it's not an effective way to clean the mold in your school. Okay. So you want to hold your maintenance team accountable too, and you want to name your concerns. This helps set the tone for why you want to invite outside contractors to work in your district. Again, focus on actions that you're taking and really explain your relationship with the contractor. Did you use a vetting process? Talk about their work with commercial buildings and how you're able to choose them. Make it easy for community members to find information and assign a person who can answer community questions. So whether that's your facilities director or your superintendent, however your communication team wants it, make sure that person is named and their information is accessible. And also in your letter, discuss what preventive maintenance you're going to adopt moving forward to make sure that, if there is a moisture problem in your building, you can address it. Oops. So that was it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cara. That was amazing. So what I would like to do next is look at the panel, see if there were questions, see if there was anything in our chat. Our chat isn't highlighted, so there were no questions. If anybody has a question, this is the time to ask. If not, we will move forward. So I'm going to give 1 minute and we'll go from there. And by a minute, it will be a short minute. All right, minute's up. Thank you, guys. What I want to highlight next are PennTAP Lunch and Learn webinars that are upcoming. In July, we have a funding and incentives webinar. There is a lot of information that opens up in July and a lot of things that we know are ongoing and would love to remind you about. So please tune into that one. That one's always fun. It's dynamic for the entire state of Pennsylvania. So there's all these different programs in different parts of the state that you can take advantage of for all different styles of businesses or buildings. Also then in August, I have another building retuning, but this is for the downtown buildings. This is for your small buildings and how we can work together. Sustainable Pittsburgh will be joining me on that webinar. So I hope everybody has enjoyed their time. I've enjoyed ours. Our contact information. So again, I'm Alana Colvin. You can see my email address is afc5057@psu, Penn State University.edu, and there is my local phone number. I am out in the Pittsburgh area, but service the whole state of Pennsylvania. And then we have Cara's information.
It's a long email, but it ends in .org. Yeah, so it's Cara@womenforahealthyenvironment.org. Our Healthy Schools PA program doesn't just work on mold, but on any environmental health concern, and we service the 10-county Southwest PA area. So you can reach me at that email or give me a call at our offices.
And if you're not in the Southwest PA area but do have questions, contact us and we'll see if we can find somebody out in your area that can answer questions that you have. Again, for Cara's information, Cara@womenforahealthyenvironment.org. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks.